Hi guys, my name is Arushi. I was a prosecution attorney last year and this year I'm the prosecution captain, and today we're going to be talking to you guys about how to write your CXs, DXs, and redirect.
I am Karen. Last year I was also a prosecution attorney, and this year I am the prosecution assistant captain.
So let's first go over some general steps that apply to the CXs, DXs, and redirect. Just some basic things that you have to do before actually writing your questions and answers. The first being understanding the case packet. It seems pretty self-explanatory, but obviously the number of people that don't read the case packet in its entirety and then start writing questions is very, very high. And obviously that's something you should take advantage of when you're going against other teams that don't really know what they're doing. But also it's something that you should make sure that you're always doing. Always read the case packet, fully understand it. You can go to our previous video to see how to do that. But yeah, second, you should be annotating the witness statements. Obviously, just reading through them isn't going to give you as much information or as good of an analysis as if you were to actually annotate them. So some things that you should be looking for, probably things that are contradictory with other parts of the case packet. Like for example, if one person has a certain view on a topic and another person has an opposing view on a topic, those are obviously contradictory. So you might want to underline those things. Additionally, you can highlight parts that are really important to the witness's character, which can tell you how to portray that character, how to be that witness. Obviously, all of that is really important. Another thing you can do is circle areas that represent emotional reaction. So for example, this witness may have thought that the action of another witness was suspicious. You would probably want to circle that because you can write a lot of questions about what made it suspicious and so on and so forth. The third thing that you're going to do is write a summary. So this can be very useful because it tells you what main ideas the witness can be used for. I guess how the witness really ties in with the rest of the storyline the prosecution or the defense is trying to tell. And it doesn't have to be very long, just one or two sentences if the witness statement is short, maybe 2 to 3 if you have a pretty long witness statement for maybe one of the main characters in the trial. The last thing you're going to do is actually look for evidence. So this is, I guess, the closest we're going to come in the general step section to actually writing questions, but you should be going line by line and recognizing which sentences, which words even can be used for specific evidence. Obviously, there's generic arguments that everyone will notice when you read through the whole witness statement, and it'll be oh yeah, this person was a friend, they support the victim, or so on and so forth. But if you look a lot more carefully and closely after annotating and summarizing, it can be a lot easier to find evidence to support the arguments that you're trying to make. So we recommend making a list of evidence that is specific to your witness, I guess evidence about arguments that only your witness can be used to justify, and a different list of evidence that's used for, I guess, overarching ideas, overarching themes throughout the trial that the prosecution or the defense is trying to go for and trying to exploit.
So focusing specifically on DXs, you want to create a storyline that the witness wants to follow throughout the entire question, or pieces of evidence that at the end of the day you want to prove. So what is your main goal with all those questions that you want to ask? They have to point towards the same thing that you're trying to prove. Now, keep in mind what the witness is trying to show, whether that's other characteristics of a different witness, whether that's proving, another witness's, how responsible they are, how, they wouldn't do something like this, or if you want to disprove someone's credibility. So whether those are your witness's goals, if they aren't the main witness, then you want to make sure that the pieces of evidence you put in are related to that aspect, or when you're choosing specific lines from their witness statement, you want to make sure they all fall under that same overarching goal or that same overarching purpose that you're trying to show. And since you're trying to tell a story, in basically the entire thing, you're trying to tell a story, whether that's that character story or what that character did, what that character heard, stuff like that. You're trying to tell a story. So the questions have to be in that kind of way. So it has to be chronological. You have to start from like really broad questions. So whether that's like, going in asking, who the witness is, like who do they know that was a part of the crime? How are they credible? Questions like that before you can move on to specific questions like what actually happened on that day or things like that. And even when you're asking questions specifically from the crime itself, you want to make sure you start from the beginning, right? So everyone knows the full story. You start from the beginning and you move step by step what happened. Now, asking follow-up questions is an easy way to make the entire process seem a lot more natural and a lot more smooth. So if you ask a question and whatever their answer is, you can ask a follow-up question to, some really small thing that they talked about within their statement. And so with that, it sounds like more conversation-like and less like a memorized, I ask a question, the witness gives me an answer type of deal. Now, in terms of trying to avoid objections and trying to make sure that the questions work and wouldn't be, too open-ended or too leading, you want to make sure that they're specific, but open-ended enough that the witness is able to explain themselves. So they can't be yes or no questions because they would be objected to as leading questions. And you can't make it way too broad, like what did you do on this day when the entire crime happened on that day, because then the witness is just going to go on and about a lot of small details. So it has to be enough that the witness knows exactly what you're wanting them to explain, but it also has to be broad enough that they can do some explaining and it's not just like a one-word answer every time. And the last one is more on the acting portion. So the DX is the perfect time for witnesses to portray their character, since this is, one of the few times where everything is set. Most of the time what the questions are going to be, and what the answers should be. So this is the time where, you've set what the personality should be like. You've set, what their tone should be like, where they should pause and everything. So this is where you want to show all of that. So in addition to that, you can adjust questions to accommodate the personalities of the witness. So for example, if you have a very shy witness, the questions can be, more timid, more, laid back, more trying to gain sympathy for this witness. While if your witness has like, a rowdy, a confident air, you can, just be more direct with the questions. And like, that also comes with, as an attorney and a witness, how you guys want to talk about it and how you guys want to combine together to build that. And the last point is, coming in what the questions are going to be and what the answers are going to be. Although there is a slight, there might be slight changes based on like objections and just that day, what the judge is doing, what the other team is doing. But for the most part, what you're coming in to do. But even though that, both on the asking and the answering part, you want to make sure that you want it to be smooth and you want it to be natural. You want it to seem like this is on the spot, I'm asking you questions and I'm on the spot hearing your answers and responding to that. That is what, is the hard part about all this acting. So you should include, pauses, thinking, even though in like a normal performance aspect, that might seem like, that, you don't know your stuff. But when you're trying to act like a character, those pauses might be necessary. The thinking might be necessary. Those all can like show a really specific part. So you want to make it real and you want it to be convincing. So next is with CX. So the easiest thing to start with the CX is to look at very specific lines within your witness that you are trying to cross-examine. And so within those lines, you can look for, discrepancies, like when they said one thing, but their actions do differently, or like they say one thing and later they say a different thing. So those kind of things, or, just lines that you think that might paint them in a bad way, might prove your point. You can like point those out as well. So going line by line, looking at what could be used in your benefit, can be looked at what can be used against them. That is like the beginning of where you start your CX. Now, you want to also force them to give answers that could be used for objections. So for example, if you ask like why did you think they were something else, or like some question like that, obviously the answer that they give will probably be objected to for like speculation or something, since a lot of that is not a set deal. So you can ask questions that will put them in a hard spot, or will be very difficult for them to answer without stepping onto an objection. Those questions work as well. Now, you also want to write backup questions. So going into the competition, you have a list of CS questions that you want to ask. But although for the most part, when you write CS questions, you want to focus on things that are written in the witness statement. So you want the answer of the question to be within the witness statement. So they are not allowed to, change from it, or, that would be like a mistake on the witness's part. But still, sometimes some questions allow for a little bit of flexibility on their side. So if for CX, a lot of it is like chronological, like you build off of each question. So if one question they don't answer how you want them to answer, sometimes that chain of questions can be broken. So in order to prevent from that, you want to write backup questions just in case they don't answer how you want them to answer. So as an example from last year's CX. So last year we had a witness named Bert, and one of the questions was, essentially, Miss Karate knew that they could use their fan base as a mean to accomplish their own goals. And as following that, we wrote for CXs, if they say no, and then we wrote a different question just in case they said no. And sometimes you have to do that multiple times. So after that question, we had a statement of like, if they said no, and the question following that was, but you testified in the previous question that Karate wanted to tap into the power of the fandom. And doesn't tap mean use their fan base to their own personal goals? But again, there's another follow-up question that if they said no to that as well, then you have to dig deeper and you have to ask another question to fish out that answer that you want. So then following that would be, so Karate wanted to tap into fandom's power for the benefit of the YouTube channel then. And so a lot of times you need to dig deeper and you need to make backup questions just in case they don't follow exactly what you want them to say. Because at the end of the day, you want them to answer exactly what you want them to answer. And sometimes you need more questions to be able to force them to say the answer you want. And similarly, write answers to objections that you see in your own cross-ex. So of course, you don't want to have objections, or you're not looking to, have the other team object to your questions, but oftentimes that you can't prevent that. And so don't be afraid if you know that, this question might be objected to. You might want to try it just in case their attorney doesn't catch it. Or, if that question really is valuable, you want to have that question in there. So, you can argue for it. You can try to make that question valid. But of course, if you know that there is a high chance that this question will be objected to, then make sure you have an answer written that is convincing and can be used to push back on your side. And the last thing is think about how that specific witness will help your point. So with specific witnesses, you want to make sure that they have the information that you need. So if they have like another side of the perspective that you want to push back, or this specific witness has one hole that you want to fill, or one specific part that you think will be really beneficial on your side, you want to make sure you know what that point is and you dig deep into that specific point.
Cool. Yeah. So just a couple things I wanted to add on CX. Another thing you should be looking for is how the witness is helping your opposing. So your opposing team is going to be using your witness the witness that you're cross-examining as a source of their argumentation for their evidence. So in addition to using them for your evidence, for your argument, you should also be trying to counteract the evidence that they're trying to bring out of that witness. So moving on to attitude during CX. So attitude during CX is really important as both an attorney as a witness for a multitude of reasons. First of all, it shows how you can act on the spot because it's not predictable, and obviously judges are going to give a lot of points there because obviously mock trial based on points. But yeah, starting on witnesses, there's a couple of things that you should remember. First of all, they may say answer with yes or no, and probably they're going to be please answer with a yes or no question. And if you don't answer, they're going to be reminder to please answer with a yes or no question. You do not have to answer with a yes or no question if they tell you to answer with a yes or no question, because sometimes it just doesn't make sense. They'll be is it true that it is possible that Montoya could have acted on her own accord? Obviously it could be possible, but by you saying yes, it's causing, I guess, a misconceptual argument that they acted on their own behalf, right? And they weren't acting because of Karate. So a lot of the time you should respond by saying, Like, I think that in order to answer this question truthfully, I would need to say more than just yes or no. Both yes or no are inappropriate in this case, and I need to like add more to my answer in order to accurately answer your question and for my answer not to be misleading. And I think that's like a pretty strong argument to respond to them saying like, please answer with a yes or no, because even the judge knows like some questions cannot just be answered with the word like yes or the word no, and it doesn't even make sense in some situations. Additionally, like attorneys, if the cross-examining attorney is being like argumentative by like this whole yes or no kind of thing, you should always be like ready to object argumentative. But yeah, same for witnesses, right? Speaking to witnesses for now. So another thing you should keep in mind is that you shouldn't just concede what they want you to concede. Obviously, the cross-ex attorney is like trying to get a certain answer out of you, right? They're trying to support their own arguments. They're trying to prove that you don't know what you're talking about. They're probably trying to make you flustered. Don't concede, like don't just give in to what they're trying to get out of you, right? Like if they ask you a question that I guess could be a yes or no question, and the answer like could be yes. So for example, back to the is it possible that they acted on their own accord? Like your answer to that should just be like no, because obviously it is possible that they acted on their own accord, but by you just saying no, like first of all, it'll make them flustered and like they're gonna get confused. But additionally, they're probably gonna ask a follow-up question that cannot be answered with the words yes or no, and they're not gonna require you to answer with the words yes or no because they're probably asking you to explain why you said no to the previous question. And at that point, you can like fully elaborate on like why that actually doesn't make sense, and it'll give you a chance to waste their cross-ex time and also to like get the argument that you're trying to make across. Next, you should remember to stay to like personality wise to your character's personality and not your own personality. Like this is not, I guess, Arushi trying to come up with an answer to the questions that they're asking. It's rather like that witness in that situation who's being accused of something, trying to respond, trying to defend themselves. So you should keep that in mind and adjust your personality accordingly and try to portray the personality that they are not expecting and B that is necessary for your argument to make more sense for the prosecution or the defense. Next, seems pretty self-explanatory, but like stay calm, don't get stressed. These are also just like high schoolers. It may seem like, kind of stressful when they're asking you questions you don't really know, like, but they probably also don't know what they're talking about if the question doesn't make sense to you. So, just stay calm, just answer it, know the case packet, and you'll be fine. Lastly, you should be ready to take advantage of the cross-examination. Like, if they're being really rude or something, like, if they're like yelling at you, which I know happened a lot in last year's trials, you should like try to counteract that. Like maybe you can try to be extra shy, to the point where the judge kind of feels bad for you, and maybe the judge will step in at that point. But also it looks bad on them, and it'll probably like dock some of their points. Okay, so next talking about attitude as an attorney during cross-examination. So this does not mean necessarily only like when your witness is being cross-examined, but also when you are cross-examining a witness. So during that time period, one thing to remember is like do not give up. This is something that happened a lot last year, and it really like messed with the flow of our questions, as Karen pointed out. In cross-ex, questions like bounce back on each other, right? Like if one question they say no to, the next question you ask that we have pre-written probably isn't going to make sense. So you can't just like say, okay, if they say no when you need them to say yes, and then move on to the next question. Because most likely it won't make sense, and then you're going to get stressed because you're going to be like, oh, like what do I do now, right? If they don't say what you expect them to say, first of all, you should have backup questions written, and you should be reading those. But you should also be like willing to put pressure on them, right? If you know that what they're saying is wrong, don't just move on. Just be like, okay, look to this line in the case packet where you explicitly say otherwise. Or what about in the previous question when you said the exact opposite? Call them out for things that they're saying that don't make sense. Call them out for like contradictory statements. Take control of like the situation, right? This is your cross-ex. It's your time to be asking questions. You should definitely be in charge here. You shouldn't be letting them like, take control of the cross-ex, talk about whatever they want. Like, no, you're trying to get specific answers out of them, and you have to make sure that they're giving you those answers before you just move on. Next, when your witness is being examined, there's a couple of things that you need to do. First, you should always be ready to object, because as a witness, you don't really have much control over what's happening, like whether the person cross-examining you as like being rude, being argumentative, asking questions that have already been answered. Like that's all stuff that you need to be ready to object to, right? It's like you can tell that your witness is being like your witness is getting stressed or something, it's your job to step in, object to whatever you can, kind of let the witness take control of the cross-examination again. Just like be there for your witness. Don't kind of like leave them hanging like, okay, I read my questions, now it's on them. Like, no, you need to be paying very close attention to every question that they're reading and think of every possible objection that you can make. Obviously, don't keep making objections because the judge is probably going to get annoyed, but you need to be thinking about how to help your witness.
So lastly for redirect, now redirect comes after cross-ex, and although I feel like some people have the mentality that you need a redirect and you need a redirect question, but in reality, redirect is really just for if there is a specific point you think didn't get across during the cross-examination, or there was a point that was flipped during the cross-examination that you want to fulfill again. So that is when redirect is necessary. And in that case, there is no reason to pre-write redirect questions, or at least if you write redirect questions, you're going to have to write a lot, and they're all going to have to be for different situations, since you never know what the cross-examination is going to be like on the other side. You don't know what the questions are going to be like. You don't know how your witness is going to respond to those questions. So it's really hard and frankly a little pointless to pre-write redirect questions. And so instead, you should be focusing on what's happening during the cross-examination. Like, what is the other side's attorney trying to get at? What is their main point that they're trying to build? What's the main hole that they found within your witness? And also, as your witness did, what did your witness respond really well at? What was your witness not able to get their point across as well as? So knowing and figuring out those points make it a lot easier for you afterwards to know which redirect questions are necessary, if redirect questions are necessary at all, and all that information you need that you don't know until the round actually happens. Now, in addition, you need to know when redirect is the last thing they hear from your witness. So if you think that there is a point that you guys have lost, or like a point that you think the other team has beat down really, really badly, it's necessary to have the judge hear the last word from your witness and have that last word be whatever they weren't able to get across before. So if you think that, your witness, for example, got stopped when trying to explain a question, or if the other side's attorney didn't let them finish a statement, you could have that be the last redirect, that you have them complete their statement or complete their idea, or things like that you think need a final conclusion. And so, for example, like during practice trials, use like that time to figure out what like which sides what should you listen to, what should you figure out, and don't use that time to try to use whatever redirect you came up with. Like, you need that time to know what should you be listening for, what has your witness not answer that well on, and come up with questions on the spot that reflect those, not ones that you think beforehand you think are necessary, because in reality they really reflect what you think happened during the cross-ex, and whether it's necessary or whether it's not, that's your judgment call, and that really just comes with how you've listened to on the CX. So that has been our guide to cross-examinations, direct examinations, and redirects, and hopefully they come in handy when either if you're a witness or if you're an attorney and you're being put in a spot where you need to handle these kind of questions.